Good afternoon. Rian Kutsia from Fortis Proactive Defense Solutions here in Pretoria. And today I have the honor of speaking to a good friend of mine who I've known for quite some time, Bryan Mennie, currently residing internationally and not in SA. A very well-traveled man, and also he was part of the South African police at one stage, and a very long involved career in the whole self-defense and security industries. And therefore, I thought today's topic would be great to discuss with Bryan. So we will be talking about personal safety when traveling internationally. Bryan Mennie, good afternoon and welcome.
Wow, Rian, thank you very, very much. It's really a privilege to be sitting and chatting with you. And I really look forward to this discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate your time, but it's always nice to talk to you. So I'm gonna just jump straight in and start right at the beginning. So we're talking international travel. When you start your preparations, I don't know how many people do this, but I'm certain that it's safe enough to say that more people should. What are the biggest risks that travelers face when visiting an unfamiliar country? And how can they prepare in advance to mitigate these?
So that's a really cool question, right? But it's also a really big one, right? So what are the sort of most prevalent risks faced by certain or when traveling? The answer to that is, well, it depends, right? And it depends on a variety of factors. It depends, of course, on where you're going, because risk or threat differs from around the world, right? There are various different types of threats, more pertinent in some places than others. But there's also a large component of what is it that you are going to be doing in a country, right? Inherently, if you're going in as a tourist, and you are sticking to really well-defined tourist areas and places where even, fairly nebulous or places where the threat profile is really dynamic, say, for example, Mexico or someplace like that, as it sort of differs throughout the country, you have hundreds of thousands of tourists who go there with marginal threat or very, very little threat, because it's well mitigated both by their own movements and then by the general sort of security infrastructure and things like that. So I'm waffling, I know, but it's a big question that you ask. What are the threats? It's too diverse to answer that in a single thing.
Sure.
I think you hit the nail on the head in various elements. Is what can you do to mitigate whatever threat dynamic exists? And the first one is fairly obvious, and almost no one does it, is understand the environment you're going into, right? In fact, no, let me correct myself. There's a step just before that. And the step is this perennial question, which again, very few people, except for accountants, especially when you're doing business travel, ask is the juice worth the squeeze? Is you going there really going to be worth it, right? Do you absolutely, or not just absolutely, but do you have to go there, right? There are many, many examples where, yep, you do have to, or it'll be more efficient for you to be there in face-to-face, etc. But equally so, that's a large component of the whole risk management structure, is just saying, okay, why do I need to go there, right? Is it something that can be done, should be done, possibly remotely? Or can it be done, if not as effectively, but still achieving the results that you want to do? Okay? It could be something, for example, like, I don't know, you have to go, if we're talking about business travel here, you have to go to a place where you are going to restructure somebody out of your organization, fire them, let them go, right? The sort of decent thing is to go and do it yourself, okay? But sometimes that's not the wisest thing. You get where I'm going. And sorry, that's probably a little bit too specific. So examples out of the question is the first question or the first approach you have is, do you need to go? Should you go? Is it the best option to go? So let's assuming the answer to that question is yes. Okay, so then let's go to the second question, and this is kind of where I was starting from, is what is it that you need to do there, right? So understand your role. Is it a instance where you're going to fly in? It's going to be airport, hotel, office, airport, gone. Generally speaking, you can go to some pretty dicey places, but that will be a perfectly fine trip if you manage it correctly, right? So there are going to be various components of that you have to manage, understand, and things like that. And that kind of leads back to the third thing. So how do you manage the risk if you have to go to a place and your mission or your purpose parameters are, let's say, as simple as airport, hotel, office, airport, gone. Then you understand, okay, what are those environments that I'm going to be to? What's the airport going to be like? Okay. And then it's a case of being as efficient as possible moving through those places. Right. So when we talk about this, what's my first threat in the airport going to be? Well, my first threat in the airport, assuming the plane lands, right, is probably going to be customs and border. Yeah. And people say, oh, yes, but that's not a threat. That's a formality. Well, depending on where you are, it's either a threat or it's something that positions you as really out of place. Okay.
Yeah.
So be as prepared as possible to go through the cold customs debacle. And if you're traveling on the old Mamba, be prepared to queue in a lot of places. And those queues are not short. Okay. So be prepared to be super patient. And also understand the foibles of the customs place where you're going through and all of that sort of stuff. When I go to France, which is very frequent, right? And I am very privileged. I can travel on either the old Mamba or a British passport, right? That is my luck. That is my fortune. That is my privilege. But if you travel with the South African passport and you're going to the sort of the Schengen Customs Union, is you've got to go and get a Schengen visa. And I will tell you something, there are a few things I hate more than dealing with the corrupt entities that manage the Schengen visa process as vendors for the various embassies and foreign countries. That's a whole different conversation. Right. However, when I go to France, as an example, I make it as clear as day that I am not British. Well, that I might have a British passport, but I will have a South African rugby jersey on, or I will speak Afrikaans to them and default to English, where we both agree.
Because they have this shared history.
Well, let's look past the fact that, thanks to William the Conqueror, they have more than just shared history, right? Shared DNA and all of that. But as close family members tend to do, especially when they're too close and intermarried and all of that sort of stuff, they don't like each other, right? So that's one of those things. So I just find it easier whenever I'm dealing with anybody in French officialdom is to make it like really clear that I'm South African, especially when you're in the south of France, right? Because for some other reason, they really love, not for some other reason, they love rugby there. So the whole South African brand is much wider known. And there are obviously a lot of South Africans that participate in their rugby. So it's a fairly popular sort of, flag to carry. But anyway, the humorous side on that one. So getting through the whole customs element to it. Be prepared, understand, and all of that. And you're going to hear that be prepared and thing as a mantra, because it is absolutely the most critical thing you can do. Then getting through the airport, another thing I like to do, if at all possible, is not to have to wait for luggage. And that's sometimes really difficult, especially when you're traveling either for longer time periods or you have to travel with items that you can't keep with you on the airplane in the cabin. Okay. But wherever I can, I try to not have to stand around and wait for luggage. Again, that's a whole lot of opportunity for people to sort of ping you as the unprepared or what's the word I'm looking for? the traveler who's not used to traveling, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And it also, I mean, yes, everybody gets luggage. Yes, everybody has luggage, and luggage is a really shared sort of experience, waiting for it. But it really, you can spot the profile differences. Somebody who's there for a purpose, they want to get in, get the job done, get out, etc. is not usually the person with 3 screaming kids and waiting for 50 million bags and all of that.
Yeah.
Okay, I exaggerate, but that's just because I'm me. So, and then that's it. So you get yourself all nice, well, and organized. Have transport waiting. It's an extra cost. Have it waiting. Have someone there to meet you. It is by far and away one of the most critical things you can do to ensure your security, is to look after that much needed time period when you're going to travel from a relatively secure environment, an airport, to your other relatively secure environment, the hotel, and then hopefully relatively secure environment, the office. When you're moving between those bubbles, make sure you know and understand who you are going to be with. Have a service, have a known driver or a recommended driver. Yes, it costs more. Yes, that cost is worth it. Okay. And yes, even as I said, a whole bunch of people are going to say, oh, yes, but the cost is really significant and I don't want to do it. And you know what? You plays the game, you take your chances, all of that sort of thing. But from a security point of view, having that known entity ready and waiting. Sorry.
We're gonna touch on transport a bit later on.
Cool. But yeah, I mean, again, from the travel point of view, having that duck in a row, being in and out in the car, zips and gone, that's a big deal, right? Now, I do some, especially on the sort of the higher risk locations, or when I am traveling with really senior leaders or something like that, I make sure that my travel is being tracked. I use WhatsApp for that, right?
Okay.
So WhatsApp track, absolutely. And I check in with my own team, or I check in with who's ever's doing my travel track, right? I make sure that they know where I am and they can see it on the tracker as well. I also make sure that they know where I'm going, where I'm expected to be, so they can see if there's a major route deviation. There are other really effective tools and tracking services you can buy, and if you can afford them, go for it, right? But travel management, really important. But again, as you said, we'll touch on that just now. And then, like I said, the hotel, I like to use either hotels I know well, hotels that I have.
Bryan, sorry, what I want to do now is just a general idea. We'll go into accommodation and things like that in more detail just now. I'm just looking at a more basic overview, this kind of stuff that, because you are so well traveled now, and this is the way your mind works, the kind of things that people need to. So let's do a scenario. Let's say I am going to visit Paris. Going there. So I've now heard that, they've got problems with pickpockets and taxi scams with, so you need to only use the certified taxi services.
Yes.
Otherwise they rob you blind with prices because they charge a fixed price. So that's the kind of stuff for me. Like for instance, in my own case, even if I just go to Cape Town, I spend quite a bit of time on Google Maps, just scanning around on Google Maps to get a bit of an idea of the layout of where I'm going to be in my head, so that I'm not completely blind when I get there. So if we can maybe touch on those kind of things, because I know for a fact you do all of these things when you go somewhere.
And sorry, I should have maybe expanded on that a little bit. Yeah, my pre-trip research is exactly that, right? So I will go and understand the geography that I'm going through, what routes that we're going to use. And even though I do use trusted driving services and known entities and things like that, it's still something I want to be aware of, because that makes good sense, right? And emergencies happen. And if for some reason your driving service doesn't, and you have to use a taxi or something like that, or rental cars and things like that, understand the environment that you're going through. When it comes to taxis, oh, as much as I'm the closet anarchist that I am, those are instances, especially when you're unfamiliar with the environment, where regulatory indicators, etc., make sense. That said, I have had colleagues, and I have also experienced, before I made it a much harder rule to use, much more trusted driving entities, of having really not close calls, that would be hyperbolic, but super aggressive drivers, or especially illegal immigration is a big deal in Europe, and you find a lot, or not, you find quite a few of people who've come into the country in that way, driving as taxi drivers and things like that, and I've had some dodgy experiences, and aggressive experiences, drivers being that, and a few times I've had to say, nope, stop, bail, go back to airport, go back to the hotel, or whatever the case is, right? And I've had other instances where drivers were arranged for me, and again, you get this happened in Nigeria once, driving from Atala Muhammad to VI to Victoria Island and Lagos, and you had one driver who wanted to stop at what was clearly not a legitimate police roadblock, right? So you had to encourage him very forcefully to keep driving. So yes, you want to understand your environment, you want to understand the challenges that are going to be there, and then you also want to understand, what is the sort of overall sentiment with regard, like, hot button issues, because when you're traveling with taxi drivers, a lot of them like to talk, right? There's a big reason why in the old days when I was in the police, you used to go and recruit taxi drivers as informants, because they know a lot, because they talk a lot, right? So yeah, they like to talk, so understand the hot button issues and steer away from them. You get where I'm going.
And Bryan, stuff like emergency numbers, embassies, that kind of stuff.
Honestly, I have really. Everybody says, "Oh, go and register with whoever the travel service is," and you know what? If you want to, so not travel service, but the sort of travel management plan that an embassy might have, and all of that. And if you want to, you can. And every single corporate entity is going to advise you that you should. Okay. And you know what? I'll be a bit of a hypocrite. I would advise all the corporate travelers from, let's say, the US to go and enroll in the State Department thing. But truly, honestly, I find those of really limited value. Okay. Maybe if you were arrested by the police or something like that, but they're going to give you some sort of bland, generic advice, if they give you advice at all, or they're going to mean nothing to you, right? But again, if you want to dot all your T's and all of that, I would. And again, for me, it's a little different, because I do so much of my travel as business travel, and I've got a lot of security vendors and security partners in the areas that I work. Is I let my security providers know, and I rely upon them for help. And often, but again, this is something far more unique to me, is they will be the ones doing my transport for me or managing my transport for me. So I get emergency contact details via them. Make sense?
Okay,
Right.
But if you're there as a tourist, then it would make sense to wherever you are to have like make sure you've got, I don't know, the hotels,
the police.
the police,
a
doctor,
the police
know
is
where they
probably your
are.
best bet, because remember, I mean, you phone those emergency. Well, it depends as well, right? The police are of extremely limited value to anybody in the United Kingdom, as an example. For they rather have their, there it's 999. You get whoever you want, but ambulance probably going to give you more help. You get where I'm going. So call the fire department. but yeah, I mean, you can, and sure, if you have criminal incidences, call the police. Sure, but they're going to be an administrative after the fact sort of thing. They're not going to come in and find you and ride into your rescue as a general rule. If that happens, you'll be super lucky, right? You've got to be in a fairly extended situation for them to actually react in time to do it. Your best, most prolific, no, prolific is the wrong word. Your best, most constant mitigation is to understand the environment and be really careful, or be very knowledgeable, and practice avoidance as far as possible. And if the absolute worst happens, you got to rely on yourself, right? You've got to have that realization.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think that sums it up for me.
Mm.
You need to do some advance, like get an idea of layout.
yeah,
Know some of the laws and stuff that's
yeah.
applicable. You end up in something and you whack over the fist, so you don't end up in trouble. You need to know these things in advance just to ensure you don't get into trouble. So I think I'm going to stand with that, and then so we can move on to the next point, because I mean, one can have like an hour long on this point. It's a very valid and interesting discussion point. Okay, so I've now organized, I've done my homework, etc. I got to Paris in France. I did some homework, so I found the correct taxi, a real taxi, not an impersonation taxi, and I got to my hotel. So this is my accommodation. So what can I do at my accommodation, whether it's rented accommodation or a hotel or whatever, to help me secure this accommodation, my room or my apartment, against theft and potentially something like staff impersonation that can either scam me or steal from me? What can I do with my accommodation itself to try and sort of make it a little bit safer?
So now you want to hear like all of the Rita CIA tricks is don't sleep with your head against the wall, and put the fire extinguisher next to the doorstop and all of that. Okay. I can't remember all of those because I don't really do those sort of things.
No, just common sense. Just common sense one.
The common sense ones, right? So what I like to do certainly is I like to book, especially. Well, it starts with room booking, right? So I like to get a room that's between 2 and 4 stories up. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, if I want the awesome view and all of that, then I'd be up higher. But you get up higher, and then it's, I mean, technically speaking, safer and all of that. Because again, let's understand the threat. If you're looking at scenarios like the hotel attacks in Mumbai and things like that, well, that's a whole different scenario, right? But if you're looking at the sort of practical, common sense, everyday things, I don't like to be too high up, not for any other dramatic reason, is that typically I'll have a lot of business, walking out the front door and going other places. And it's just a schlep to sit and wait for an elevator for all the time, or, you go down the stairs and I'm just lazy, right?
Yeah.
So I like to be as close as I can to the ground floor to make it easier for myself. When it comes to the room, hey, there's some really super practical things. Like when you go up, you don't really need a baggage porter to come up with you. You take your own bag, because hopefully you've really minimized your packing and it's all in 1 or maybe 2 bags, and you carry your own stuff up and all of that. And then you can go and check out your room. So when you're in, you put your bag down, check your room out, make sure you know where the exits are, right? Whether it be a fire, earthquake, or whatever it is, make sure you know where your exits are. Then so you got that, and then make yourself comfortable in your room. What I do in my own packing is I will typically have 2 bags, right? So I'll have a bag for all my clothes and stuff, and I'll have a bag with my laptop and all my other things, passport, etc., etc., etc. My passport, and always a clean pair of underwear in the passport bags, and socks, because my feet get cold quick and I hate wet socks. But that aside, right, is so you have all of that. I'd never unpack that bag in totality. There's a whole part of me that knows that if I'm working on my laptop, I can just close it, stuff it in the bag, take the charger, put it in there grab my bag, and I'm out of there. My passport's in there always, etc. And when I walk out and I go and do my business at the office, my bag's with me. So I don't have to worry, is my passport being stolen? Because it's there. And if I can't get back to my hotel for whatever reason, my passport's there. Okay. I got some other things that I typically travel with. I typically travel with enough cash to get me to an airport. Okay. Say 100, 150, maybe $200. Right. I have a friend. He's got a lot more money than me. He has a Rolex. You know what a Rolex is? A Rolex is the last ticket out of anyway. Okay. But that's his sort of gap, right? So he keeps that sort of thing organized in, always with him. And that's what I do. My passport, my phone, sat phone, all of that, it's there. It's there with me. So if I'm in my room and a fire breaks out, I'm grabbing it and I'm going. And I'm not listening to them on the airplane either. I'm not leaving my bags behind. It's coming with me off in the evacuation. You get where I'm going. So, okay, so that aside, I don't unpack that. The rest, I'll hang up my suit because they're nice and you've got to look the part and all of that. Make myself as comfortable as possible. With regards, like the barrier security for a room is, I use whatever locks they provide, right? Be it the little chain lock. Can they be defeated? Absolutely. Absolutely. They can be defeated. I don't sleep that soundly that I wouldn't wake up. Unless maybe they burnt a CD, right? You should show them that other video of yours. Okay. But that sort of nonsense aside, right, is that's the one I'm going to use. You can't take a cheap hotel door and create some sort of impenetrable barrier type of thing. So I know where the exits are. I know where the firefighting equipment is. Firefighting equipment is dual purpose if you're in that Mumbai hotel scenario, right? But so know where that sort of stuff is. And then just, relax. I don't do room service. One of the reasons is, it's just a little bit of laziness, and I don't like food in my room. But the personal foibles aside, that gives an excuse for somebody to knock at your door. Are people going to be in your room? Absolutely. I don't want a dirty room. That's what housekeeping is there for. They make up the room when I'm not in it and all of that. But whilst I'm in it, there should be nobody knocking at my door. I don't order things up to my room. I'll go downstairs and get them. I always make sure I have quite a bit of water, so I'll buy water a lot because, I like water and tea, coffee, etc. Although, hey, you should really start sending out better levels of coffees to hotels. I think that's a gap in the market because hotel coffee is terrible in the rooms. But, that aside, just don't give people an excuse to be up there. When I'm traveling with leaders and I'm looking after them, they don't do room service either. There's no deliveries to their rooms. I make sure that if whoever still places landline calls, no calls go up to their rooms either. Everything will then come to me. Documents, all of that sort of stuff will then come to me, and it won't come to my room. It'll be held and I will collect it. You get where I'm going? So I make sure hotel staff know that. And honestly, they're really accommodating for that, right? So I just tell them, there's no reason anybody should go up to my room, certainly not anybody I'm looking after. And the rest of the time, it's, I'll get it at reception.
No, that makes sense. And I personally like that. Like one thing I do, and I've had people frown at me for that, because not all people think like this. I think they should, but that's just me. We've got the car guards here, and they love to come and run over and help you unpack your trolley into the room. I absolutely don't allow that.
Yeah.
For the simple reason, it's the same reason why you don't want somebody in your hotel room, to come and bring your food. I don't want strangers close to me.
Yeah.
That's just in a sort of a more controlled environment. If you're there as a tourist, you're going to out and about. Obviously, there will be, but in my little space, stay away.
Certainly, when you're in it, right? When you're in
Exactly.
it, you want control, and it's the same sort of thing. If you need more, I don't know, shampoos or whatever, because you've stolen the ones already and you want to steal some more, it's go down to reception and get them.
And
You get where I'm
awesome.
going, or go and find
No,
the housekeeper and you approach them. So you initiate all of that contact, and then because here's the thing, right, Rian, from a psychological point, wider than just hotel rooms. What is it? What is it that so many people look for? Is they look for that definitive indicator that something's happening, something good, something bad, right? It's human nature, right? That's what we look for. So how do you know you're being hijacked? Well, you know you're being hijacked not when you look for all of the pre-incident indicators, etc., because you may or may not recognize them, but you for damn sure know you're being hijacked when someone puts the gun through the window, right? Hijack, okay. Okay, that is
yeah,
like a really super key indicator. But here's the other one that usually precedes it is the knock on the window. And it's the same sort of thing. If you are absolutely aware of every approach that should be made to you legitimately, everything else is an indicator. So you got to have your fence. Sometimes the fence got to be electric, right? If we talk
yeah,
about the jokes aside, right? So you have your fence. So you use your fence as that indicator, and that's your barrier. You hear the knock on the door, that should absolutely give you what is this, what is going on, establish what it is so you can regain control of the situation.
I like that.
Yeah.
Brian, I want to talk now about public transport. I'm going to first touch on public transport and after that on rentals. So public transport, I'm back to my scenario. I'm now in Paris. I'm going sightseeing. I'm there as a tourist. So I'm using either a bus or an Uber or a taxi. We'll get to walking around just now, but when I'm using, or obviously the trains, what are sort of common threats that I need to be aware of, like pickpockets and stuff? And when I'm using public transport, and what steps, again, it always comes back to that because it's that preparedness, can I take to avoid potential problems and scams?
Okay. So there's a lot in that question. Let's boil it down to the common factor here. Being targeted by a criminal for whatever, wherever, is a matter primarily of profiling. Okay. So what do I mean by this? There are two types of criminals, very broadly speaking. There are effect predators. Well, they're all predators, but there are two types of the predators. There are effect predators and there are resource-driven predators. Resource-driven predators, somebody who wants to take something from you for their own gain, a thief. Effect predator, somebody who wants to do something to you for their own feeling of fulfillment, a rapist, right? Suicide bomber, effect predator, okay? It's gaining nothing,
Yeah.
it's causing the effect. Okay. So we're looking primarily at resource predators, and there's somewhat of a clue in the concept of predators. So just like any predator, they are going to look for weak points. So you minimize the projection of those weak points. Here's the first thing. Earbuds. Put away the earbuds. If you absolutely have to have one, just one. And make it the bud, not the wired one, so you can keep looking around and all of that. But put it away if you possibly can. Here, see your environment. Don't be drawn into the second thing, the phone, right? So, yes, sometimes you're going to have to use the phone to navigate or whatever, but quick navigate. Remember, pick your landmark, put it away. Move with purpose, move with confidence, get to where you're going, safe spot, open up, check, next landmark, basics of navigation, right? Translate that to an urban environment. And off you go. If you need to have the step-by-step directions, just one earbud, put it in, you listen, okay, stop, move, whatever. But the phone should not be in your hands. Your backpack, messenger bags are another great one. I actually do really like messenger bags. Sling it so it's up in front. Your backpack, if it's on your back, Make sure it's those those thief resistant ones that people can't pickpocket, or it's much more difficult to pickpocket and things like that. Cards,
And to open, yes.
yes, right. So cards, all of that sort of stuff. RFID wallets, super simple. RFID wallets, they're like cheap as chips, and just put your cards in there, right? They're so much easier to carry. I'm trying to look for my wallet. I think it's downstairs, but it's easy, right? So RFID wallets, put it in there.
Sorry, Brian, can you maybe just explain for the
Okay.
viewers' sake what an RFID wallet is?
So an RFID wallet just blocks the ability of your card chip or your card to be scanned. So you know how you'll go to a pay point and you'll tap it, right? Because it's just
Yeah.
reading the close proximity radio frequency. Or if you have like your key card at the hotel, that works primarily off, especially like the MyFair cards, etc. You don't need to put it in something so it reads a barcode or a chip. You just tap it, right? So it's RFID that it's reading your mobile phone as well. That's how you can tap and pay and all that sort of stuff. It just blocks that out, right? So nobody can come across with a scanner and extract information or whatever it is from them. So keep your stuff all nicely zooted up. I have RFID thing for my laptop, for my car keys. It's not expensive at all. It keeps it all nice and compartmentalized and smart and protected, and the whole works. And then you move with it and move with purpose, right? So if you're going from A to B, go from A to B. If it's there as a tourist, so let's come back to the more specifics of the question. So the public transport, again, like I said, it's use absolutely the regulatory taxis and all of that. So understand what those would look like and what they'd be. Pre-arrange with the transport with your hotel and get a driver's number who if you've now met, you had a driver pre-arranged, get that driver's number, right? Take a cool photo of him. Hey, how's it going? This is nice. I'm going to show all my family. Make sure you get his vehicle's details in the background. Hey, I want to show my family. You're going to be my driver for the trip. I will phone you, right? Make sure that those details are known. And then use that driver. Makes sense, right? So you're using somebody else to track you on WhatsApp. If you're going to use Uber, use the tracking facility on Uber, right? And in some countries, Uber is a really good option if you have to use that option. But quite honestly, if you're going to go there as a tourist, I'm going to sound like a little bit of a cliche. Use the big tours. I will tell you something. No, it's not a dangerous place at all. It's an awesome place. It's a wonderful place. I strongly recommend it, but I took my wife to Crete for her birthday. It's, again, I'll emphasize, it's an amazing place. But we went on the Land Rover safari tours and we went on organized tours and all of that. Hey, you get so much more value and you see so much more and you make really good friends and all of that. But you also know from a security point of view, there's a destination, there's an itinerary, so you can understand everything and you go. Yes. You go, and it also helps with your orientation, your knowledge, etc., of the place where you're going. So yeah, from that tourist perspective, when it comes to public transport, especially when it comes to things like trains, certainly in your scenario in Paris, man, the metro is complicated. I don't like going on the metro unless I have somebody who really knows it well with me. So I have a few of my team who live in Paris. They know it well. They speak French, obviously, and my French is barely communicable, enough to tell people I'm not English, right? But, I will go with them, sure. I will not go alone. Right?
Okay.
It's the tube in London, which I know much better. There's certain places I will go, like I will go on the Elizabeth line, which is really good and well done and all of that. I will not travel on the tube after 7 or 8 o'clock at night. It's just a freaking, it's stupid zone. You get where I'm going? In New York, I'm not using the subway. Not even a little bit. Sorry, I'm not going down there. It stinks of pee all the time, and pee and cannabis. That's the smell of New York. And no, I'm not going in there. I will use their taxis. I will use an Uber or whatever the case is, but I'm not getting on those. And also no buses. no buses. Don't
Well,
do
you see,
buses.
that to me is the point. You are mitigating. You're thinking about these things, and you're mitigating potential problems. So I mean, we all see the videos of what happens on the New York subway. I mean, we obviously don't know the regularity, but I can assume that it's regular enough to always feature. So it would make sense if you're in New York to skip that, say, after hours.
Yep.
In the dark, maybe skip it in its entirely and find other ways of moving around, because then you're cutting out a whole potential problem scenario. The whole thing for me boils down to, again, you need to keep on thinking on your feet, even if you're there as a tourist. You can still keep on thinking.
Well,
so when you move on, now carry on.
Think about it this way, right? So let's think about the design concept of a public transport system, right? Public transport systems are not designed for tourists. They, with the very few exceptions, are not really designed for business travelers either. Commute systems are designed for exactly that. So a bus would be for somebody who lives in a specific area, has a regular route to get to either a train or to get to an inner city destination. It is somebody who knows that environment, who's aware of what all of the indicators are in an environment. He's aware, or she's aware, far more acutely aware, or should be, and has that local knowledge and that local understanding of something. It is, and again, there are always exceptions, right? So I'm obviously not talking about tourist buses, because tourist buses fall under that category of doing an organized tour. I'm also not talking about something like the Heathrow Express, right? Which is designed specifically to get people from Heathrow Airport to what's Paddington Station. Okay. So it's not that. Those are very obviously created for that. And then the overland trains, to a lesser degree, because they're taking people who can afford it, because damn, it's expensive in the UK, right? But they're taking people to a tourist type of destination. But a commute setup is not designed primarily for tourists. It's designed to get a large amount of people who know an area into the place where they work that they also know, right? And quite frankly, to your point, on the New York subway, how regular those type of incidents are or are not, what is regular is that it's dirty, it's smelly, and it's unpleasant. That is a very consistent theme about the New York subways. And quite frankly, you can call me as snobbish as you like. I don't like being in a place that smells of piss. One of the reasons why I don't go to San Francisco, because I don't like walking in shit. Sorry, excuse the language, but you get where I'm going. Human fecal matter is not a thing I like.
No, I prefer to keep away from it. So if we move on to a rental car that you're going to be driving yourself, I think everything you've just said remains applicable. Same for when you're walking around. But things that you ought to add, because now you're going to be driving yourself, so you need to know the lay of the land a little bit better. And you have to have that international driving license, and keep valuables out of sight, pretty much the same as you do in South Africa.
Well, yes, right, and that should quite frankly be common logic.
Yeah.
So when it comes to rentals, I'm very circumspect. The United States, with the exception of New York and Washington, D.C., which is just a weird place, but I'm quite happy renting, especially when you go to a nice place like North Carolina, etc., because it's comparatively easy, and the transportation system is really designed around vehicles. You get where I'm going. So driving there is easy as long as you abide by the law. So make sure you know the speed limits and what to do when a police officer pulls you over, etc. I'm okay with driving in London, but that's, I drive my own car there, so I'm very comfortable with it. It's very expensive to drive in London, and you're not going anywhere very quickly. Similarly in Paris is I wouldn't go on my first trip to Paris and rent a car. You get where I'm going? If I'm there the third or
Mhm.
fourth or fifth time and I'm more aware of where it's going, then sure. So you want to be aware of it. You also want to rent vehicles that blend in with what most people are doing. It's really easier to get, certainly in Europe, to get smaller cars because the roads are smaller and the parking is smaller and it's just easier.
Okay.
Okay. But those practicalities aside, right? You've got to kind of think of renting cars as something that you've got to be really comfortable with. And then here's the second thing: is make sure you have a phone with local SIM card so you can access data, or eSIM, or whatever system you're using, and
Mm.
Waze, or Waze is the navigation system I like to use. But make sure that you have a system that will get you back on track, right? I mean, I'm not saying don't
Okay.
know where you're going and don't study the route beforehand. Those, again, should be what you should do all the time. But make sure that if you have to make a few diversionary turns, you can get back on track quickly. Also, you don't have to stop and ask directions, because that's a big indicator. Again, what
Yes.
we're talking about that criminals look for,
Mhm.
of somebody who's unsure, right, where they're going,
Mhm.
stopping, tap on the brakes, turn there, then U turn, and things like that. All of those really mark you out from the baseline of the environment, right? So make sure that if you're going to drive yourself, that you're really comfortable, you know where you're going, and you've got something that'll get you back on track as quickly as possible. But that should be the
Okay.
rule when you're driving at home too, right?
Should be.
Mm. And then, the
Would-
other thing is, keep windows up if it's possible, right? Aircon on, if it's hot, and all of that. Don't give people opportunity to engage you or break into your space under pretext, right? Seemingly innocent or whatever there is. Make sure your barriers are up. And be
Yes.
aware, don't get stuck into a phone, even if you're the passenger, right? And coming back to, if you're driving with somebody, if you're in a taxi, don't sit in your phone the whole time. Keep your eyes up, keep looking around. Don't sleep in the car. You can sleep at the hotel, you can sleep when you get where you're going. Look at things,
Yes.
right? Make sure you understand the environment. What is the baseline and what stands out from the baseline? Sorry, the baseline being, what is the normal set of conditions for that environment?
For, uh,
Yeah.
Brian, okay. Last but not least is when you're now going to go walkies. Um, in European cities, it seems to be the big thing. If you're there as a tourist, you do uh, quite a lot of walking to sightsee. Um, so you're going to be popping in and out the whole time, and so on. Um, what are the basics I need to keep in mind? We've now discussed how you carry your stuff. I think all of that remains applicable. It's as applicable whether you get on a train packed with a bunch of other people, where you keep your valuables and the RFID wallet for the
Mm.
cards and so on. But if you're going to be walking around, I mean, you need to be aware of scams. You need to know scams. Have you encountered some of these scams that people always talk about? Say in Paris, the city of uh, my trip for the video.
So in Paris, no, I've never encountered that.
Mhm.
But Rian, again, I will share with you is, I don't invite a lot of approaches, right? So I'm very reticent, and again, it comes back to preparedness. If you stand around and look lost, yes, you are going to be approached, and yes, those approaches are fairly likely to be scams of some sort. Okay, so I look at any approach with a lot of cynicism. Makes sense, right?
Mhm.
Um, unless I'm initiating it, I'm almost always just going to back away from it, or make sure that the other person backs away from it. Okay.
Mhm.
And that is the biggest, because if anybody wants to scam you, they've got to approach you. Sometimes the approaches are very well thought out, like somebody, hey,
Mhm.
can you give me directions right? And then they're showing you their phone and using that as an approach mechanism. And even somebody who wants to mug you still has to, they've got to be within arm's length of you typically, even if they have a firearm, right?
Mm.
I mean, everybody sort of thinks of a firearm robbery as being this extended event, but most typically it's an arm's length, and it's not somebody pointing at you, it's just somebody showing you that they have the firearm or pointing at you in this sort of low position.
Yeah.
Same with knife, all of those sort of things, right? So if you can create that space and maintain that space, right, and be aware that that space is something that you might need to work to maintain. So somebody approaches you, you back off, you push them away, whatever the case might be, right? Another tactic I use to do is, especially when they speak English to you, I speak Afrikaans back to them.
Okay.
Right. Or basic Zulu, or Arabic sometimes, although that's not, you probably understood in Paris if you do that, but you get where I'm going,
Yes.
right? So speak a foreign language, make yourself unapproachable. When it comes to walking around, so you want to be the walk around tourist. There's certain cities, Brno, for example, in the Czech Republic, go and walk around the old city. It's fine. You know, quite frankly, it's a very, very low crime rate, much better police. The people there are, broadly speaking, if not effusively friendly, but, you know, everybody's there with purpose. There's far lesser issues. I don't do walkabouts in London. I don't, you know, if you want to do the tourist thing in London, go to the place, then get yourself transport to the next place, explore the place. So if you want to go to the
Okay.
tower, do the tower, right? If you want to go City of London, sure, different thing. You can walk around there and all of that. But don't do the broader London walking around thing. I don't particularly think it's an incredibly badly policed environment, number one. The police there are not very good. But it's also, there's a lot of crime issues, which it's just easier to avoid, right, by not doing it.
Yes.
Unless it's something like super organized, like a specific walking tour, right? Again, still be aware, still look at things, but okay, that leads me into my next point. So there's your first choice, is don't do it in certain places, or know and understand the areas in which you're going to do it, right? Again, your trip to Paris, understand where you're going to do your walking bits. Don't walk blithely around like some idiot. And then come back to those other rules. So know and understand your environment. Know and understand what the baseline is. Again, as I said, what is the normal set of circumstances so you can spot anomalies. Know and understand and how to look for predatorial behavior. That's a whole big in-depth discussion, right? When you talk about target glancing, when you talk about synchronization, when you talk about noticing, understanding, and detecting surveillance, all of those sort of things, that's a skill set that you have to work on, right? Again, also don't project an unsure nature, project a hard target profile. Sorry, I know this sounds like super tactical, Tim, and all of that, and I'm not trying to say be the gray man, wear 511. No, what I'm trying to say is, if you look like somebody who's easily targeted, you're going to get targeted. So make sure you're aware of where you are, know what you're doing, and be positive about your movements and everything that you need to do. Okay, and get to
So
where you're
again,
going.
just do a little bit of homework the night before. If
Yeah.
you know tomorrow I'm going to be walking around in this area, just take like 15, 20 minutes and do a bit of homework to get a general layout in your mind, so you don't look completely lost.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And also going back to those other rules, phones away. If you need to take photos, stop, take the photos, put your phones away. Those
Yeah.
selfie sticks, oh dear goodness, just buy yourself a GoPro. If you want to take the action shots, buy a GoPro, put the strap on, and don't walk around with those stupid selfie sticks or those balancing gimbals and pretend you some YouTuber, whatever. If you're a tourist, stop, take your photos, take your video, and then put it away and move on. Right?
Yeah.
And that's the sort of thing. There are other things you can look at, but by and large, it's be aware of being distracted by somebody. As I said, don't invite the approach,
Yeah.
and treat approaches with suspicion, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Here's the biggest scam that you will find in most places. It's not as much people trying to skim your card, although that exists, or pick your pocket, although that exists too. The biggest scam is people selling tourist products, cheap ass made, mass produced pieces of plastic that say you're at the Eiffel Tower, you're at the London Eye, or whatever.
Yes.
T-shirts and that sort of things. That's the scam, right? That's the scam. So avoid those and you'll be fine. People trying to take photographs, people dropping stuff in front of you, you pick it up and then they want to. So again, the approach, right? Anything that lets people touch you or get within arm's distance that you don't want, distrust immediately. Somebody's dropping something and you pick it up and hand it back to them and they say, oh, no, you keep it. And then you'll walk away and they make this big noise, give me money, all of that sort of stuff. I can throw the stuff down or just ignore them. Not your circus, not your monkeys, not your problems. Just somebody drops their kid or whatever. Hey, that's your thing, not mine.
Don't engage.
Yep, exactly that. Right?
Okay.
And if you absolutely want to engage, you choose the engagement. Don't let circumstance choose it for you, and don't let an action allow somebody else to initiate it. Somebody says, are you okay? Are you lost? I'm perfectly fine. Thank you. If I need a policeman, I'll go to a policeman. If I need the information counter, I'll go there.
I like that. Bryan, I think in summary, to sum up the whole conversation.
Sorry, there's one more thing. Sorry, Rian.
Yeah.
It's just I went on a trip to Morocco, and myself, my wife, and my kids, and we had this one guy getting really, really fucking leery and aggressive with my wife. Well, when I say aggressive, not aggressive, but he was trying to really get close and all that sort of thing. And we just turned around, and I know a little bit of Arabic, a lot of swear words in it. And I just used all of those swear words. And when I ran out, I just started speaking Afrikaans to him. And I just told him, and there were a lot of F words in it. And my wife added to that. And we were just like super aggressive and positive to get out of there. And then we got out of there. We went into a sort of a safer location, into a cafe. We asked the cafe owner, where's the closest best taxi, right? Got the taxi, fine, because we did have a driver who we'd recognized, but he wasn't close enough. So we got the taxi. We asked the taxi to take us to a different tourist location, and then met our driver who we designated there at that next spot, right? And that, I will say, that was pretty dodgy. That was in the market space in Marrakesh. And we were a little silly. Those are tourist traps, and we should have expected that. But that's the other thing. What I'm trying to say is, don't be all meek and mild. Just be front foot. You get where I'm going? And if
body language.
Yeah, and if that and if your aggression attracts the police, that's better. That's fine, right? You'll see how many policemen recognize scammers, and a lot of those countries, they have a 5-point plan for bothersome, especially people who bother tourists in a tourist economy, right?
Oh, okay.
And you see, certainly the Moroccan police, and the Turkish police as well. I will say I was very impressed with them. Right, they were very good about dealing with two things: cocky, drunk tourists, and there are a lot of them there, and the people trying to scam the cocky, drunk tourists. And there was a lot of 5-point crime prevention plans being explained,
being handed out.
Yeah. Similarly in Portugal as well, by the way.
I think I'm gonna end there. What I'd like to just add in closure is, because I know for a fact, and for a fact, that there will be people who see this video and they will say, yeah, but that's paranoia. I want to go there. If I go to Paris, I want to go and enjoy myself. I think you can very easily accommodate all of these things and enjoy your holiday. You will probably enjoy your holiday even more. Because your odds of something untoward happening is less than if you're completely unprepared. So it's worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, go and see Paris for the awesome things that it has, not for the
Yeah,
inside of a hospital in Paris, because they are bad, or a
exactly.
police station in Paris.
Yes. Or a police station. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Bryan, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And for the viewers, if you followed us right to the end of this discussion, which I hope you did, and you found it interesting and worth your while, please remember to click the like and subscribe button. Help us grow the channel so we can get the message out to more people. And Bryan, we will chat again soon. I look forward to more chats with you. It's always interesting. Thank you again for making time for me.